And now, Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks, presented by AARP. And for DJ this week, I am Rhett Lewis. And, of course, we've got Bucky Brooks here with us, worldwide Bucky Brooks over in London. Buck, what's going on over there in London? Everything still good?
Yeah, everything is good. I think I'm still trying to adjust to the time change. The time is, I am where we are. I'm eight hours ahead.
Oh, so,
goodness. While you're just kind of waking up, it is becoming dark.
You're shutting it down.
Way.
Okay.
So I'm trying to kind of put it together. But it's been a great experience hanging with the people at NFL UK, the people at Sky Sports, calling games, kind of doing some stuff differently. It's been nice.
That's awesome, man.
Nice little journey. Yeah,
that's really cool. I know this is the second year you've done it, so clearly, obviously, some things that are some cool stuff that's going on to get you to go back, and hopefully that's something that you can get to continue to do. But we've got a lot of stuff going on here today. What do we want to do? We got an interview with Brian Baldinger, as you know. Hashtag Baldy's Breakdowns on Instagram and Twitter have become the stuff of legend on social media these days. Baldy will join us here shortly. I know you and DJ had a chance to catch up with him. We'll have that interview for you. We'll take a look at some of the conference championship games and some players that you might see in those games that we will be talking about on Path to the Draft starting in March, April, and May, leading up to the draft, obviously. So we'll get into that. We'll answer some of your questions that you left in the comments section on the Move the Sticks download page here. And then we will also get into some news and some matchups. And Bucky, getting into the news, man, it was really, I guess there were some people inside the Carolina Panthers facility that were shocked to hear that Ron Rivera was let go by new owner David Tepper. I guess the way the season has gone, kind of up and down lately, more down than up, at the end of a 9-year tenure, maybe we shouldn't be terribly surprised considering the new ownership, but man, it's unfortunate to see. This is one of the great guys in the NFL, and I imagine he won't be out of work long.
No, look, great coach, a guy who had to really deal with a lot of adversity while there. He was kind of the spokesperson for the Panthers, doing a lot of scandals. You think about all the stuff that kind of took place on his watch. Jerry Richardson, the owner, having misconduct, having issues with Cam Newton, having an accident, having his own fire, his house being burned down, having to deal with all of that. Like, he has always been a guy that has been able to weather the storm and really represent the organization really well. I think ultimately what this came down to is, it's kind of crazy to think about. The Panthers, despite having won 3 straight division titles, they've never put together back-to-back winning seasons. Right. That is unbelievable for me to think about, like a franchise that hasn't been able to do it. And then the last couple of years, with injuries to Cam Newton and just kind of the inconsistent play of the team on both sides of the ball, I think the owner was patient enough, but he just kind of wanted to be able to put his own imprint on the organization. I think the thing that was telling, and listening to David Tepper have an interview with the Panthers website, he talked about the game skewing towards the offense. And he talked about the league implementing rules that are skewing more towards offense and offensive coaches, and that there should be a disparity between offensive coaches and defensive coaches in the head coaching role because of the familiarity with how to exploit the rules and the advantages. And when he said that, it automatically took me to, well, they're going to hire an offensive coach.
Yeah.
But I do worry about Tepper kind of taking a short-sighted view on what a head coach is, because the head coach is more than just the play caller. Right. The head coach is the guy that kind of sets the vision for the franchise, sets the vision for the team. He conveys that vision to the coaches and the players. And then his job is to make sure that on a daily basis, everybody is moving in the right direction. And so the head coach role is more about the other days than game day. Yes, he wants to get them to game day. He has to make some tactical decisions. But really, it's about creating an environment that is conducive to winning and maintaining that environment. And so when Tepper is making this hire, I certainly hope he looks beyond the playbook and really focuses in on the leadership qualities and the intangibles that head coaches must have.
Yeah, that's an important an important thing, and I think a lot of people, we've talked about it here before. A lot of people, when they think about Sean McVay as a type of head coach that teams are looking for and have been looking for, a creative offensive mind, an innovative offensive mind, and that can bring some excitement to that side of the football. I don't think we've given McVay and the Rams enough credit for what he does as a leader of that team as well. It's not just about scheming things and getting your guys in the right position to play, from a scheme standpoint, as you mentioned. I think that's important to note. But I think there's a few things that we can take away from what David Tepper said when he was on what he's going to be looking for in a new head coach. Offensive minded, that's kind of where the league has been skewing. He definitely made that mention. Also said he wants old school discipline with new school modern processes. That's where we get into the analytics world a little bit. So who fits that mold? Couple guys kind of jumped out at me fairly quickly here, Bucky, and you can kind of give me a sense of what you're thinking here. And the first one has been thrown around on Twitter a little bit, obviously because of the success of the Ravens and where they have gone in the analytics world with their run game. Greg Roman, offensive coordinator, kind of strikes me as a little bit more of an old school type of guy, but willing to adapt and bring in some new school type of things that we've seen with the Lamar Jackson-led Ravens offense. And then the other one, Bucky, was Eric Bieniemy with the Chiefs. And I think you just asked Maurice Jones-Drew if he's old school. And I think he'll tell you from their time together. So with in terms of discipline and running a tight ship, what do those two names mean to you?
Well, I think Greg Roman is going to be one of the hot candidates. A couple of reasons why it potentially would fit in Carolina. You look at Lamar Jackson, you look at what Lamar Jackson is as a quarterback, dual threat playmaker, a guy who has kind of created a new stat category, total yardage from the quarterback, where you combine his rushing yards and his passing yards to really see his total impact. Well, Cam Newton is older, but Cam Newton at his best was a bigger, maybe even better version of Lamar Jackson. Like if you go back and look at the first 4 or 5 years,
no doubt.
He was that additional running back. He was their short yardage back, and he actually played at his best when he had the ball in his hands all the time as a runner, thrower, threat. So Greg Roman would fit there. We saw what Greg Roman did with Colin Kaepernick. We've seen it again with Lamar Jackson, even with Tyrod Taylor. And even though people who I know that are around Greg Roman would say that, look, this isn't necessarily his MO in terms of how he wants to play. Right. I think the best thing that has happened is he's had success to this, so he's going to have to live in this world. So he would be great. Bieniemy, I think Bieniemy is interesting because when you look at Kansas City, he is the offensive coordinator. However, he and Andy Reid kind of split the play calling duties, and it appears that Andy Reid is kind of the guy that calls most of the plays. And so when you bring him in, are you getting what Doug Peterson and those guys were able to do initially in Philadelphia? Are you getting that play calling acumen, that feel for building your offense or whatever? I will say this. As a leader, he's an outstanding leader. He is a guy who doesn't mind challenging his players. He has a clear vision. He certainly has been successful, not only as a player in his own right, winning the national championship at Colorado, but having a successful career for a few different organizations as a special team standout, and now working his way up the ladder as a position coach and coordinator. He brings a lot to the table. I think with everybody, when you make these hires, who do they have coming with them? Yeah. Because the star-studded cast of coaches that they bring with them is really as important, if not more important, than the job that they're going to do in the individual role.
And then the last one that I'll say, maybe a bit of a dark horse here. You and I know him well, and his name has not been mentioned in the head coaching circles as of late. He's only been back in the NFL for 2 years, or for more than a couple of years after a brief stint at Georgia. But Brian Schottenheimer, I think is an interesting one. If we're talking about old school discipline, I'm not sure his dad. his dad would fit that bill more than anybody. I would I would venture to, I guess, to say. I think you can attest to that. And I know there are teams out there that are more analytically involved than the Seahawks. So I'm not sure where his philosophy is on that. My guess is if it was something that he had control over, you could probably see those types of things maybe more involved. But it's going to be an interesting one, especially considering the success of the Seahawks offensively during his tenure and the success of that team overall, and how Russell Wilson has continued to transform into an MVP candidate.
It's funny because everyone in the analytics world kind of thinks when Tepper alludes to that like it's about the past. But if you really go back, and because you had privy to kind of watch this team while you were calling, I think there are a lot of people that are going to look at the success that Army and Navy have had, exploiting the advantages with the run game, understanding how analytics can kind of play in your favor, going on fourth down, doing some things that are a little unconventional, using all four downs so you call the plays differently on third down. I do believe there's going to be some of that. How analytics play a role in, because Tepper also went on to talk about kind of rebooting the organizational structure where he wanted to keep Marty Herney around in more of a senior position, but maybe
bring in somebody else as well.
A COO, like a vice president and assistant general manager who's also in head of analytics to kind of help bring that department up to speed. And so when you think about how can you get all of these things working, it'd be interesting. And I think it will be interesting, as he talked about, new school analytics with old school football discipline.
Right.
How many old football heads are willing to embrace the analytics and some of the stuff
that's the question. Say? Yeah. It might be, you might be looking for a unicorn. Right.
Yeah. Because what happens is when you're the guy, like for instance, there was a craze with everyone going for 2-point plays. Well, if the analytics are saying one thing and you go by the analytics and you don't get it, you now have to stand up in front of the press and explain why we went for 2 in these situations. And so, like, the coach gets crucified for what is an organizational decision, and can ownership and everybody back him when he takes the bullets for them when things don't go according to script based on the analytics.
All right, yeah, so the Panthers looking for their replacement. They get a jump start on it here over the course of the final month of this season as they try to find the next leader of the Carolina Panthers. Okay, let's move into a couple of marquee matchups this weekend here in Week 14 of the NFL. And look, obviously talking about the Ravens and the Bills would be one of them. I want to get into the 49ers and Saints, two top teams, really, 2 of the 3 top teams in the NFC. Look, this game should be so much fun. And I think, look, one thing for me that sticks out, Bucky, is can the Saints defend the edge run game? That's where the 49ers found success against the Ravens. I'm sure that's an area that they kind of pride themselves on. That's where they want to find room. Can the Saints do that? And then somehow can the 49ers find a way to stop Michael Thomas?
Yeah, Rhett, it's an interesting thing. And I think, first off, when it comes to the 49ers, George Kittle being back is everything to them when it comes to the run game.
Yeah.
His ability to really seal the edge really pops when you look at the tape, but it really pops when you look at the numbers. I got the numbers in front of me. When George Kittle is around, they run the ball outside on the edges 57% of the time. They're averaging 5 yards a carry. 18% of their 10-plus runs have come when he's been on the field. When they're not, only on 52% of the time are they running outside, and they're only averaging 3.4 yards per carry. So you're talking about almost a 2-yard per carry difference when he's on the edge. And his ability to seal the edges really enables them to kind of do what they always want to do: stretch, bootleg game, running the yin and the yang. And then with him, he's such a terrific wide receiver that you got to worry about him over the middle of the field, not just because he can command it and make the catches between the hashes, but when he gets the ball in his hands, he is as dangerous as any playmaker that we've seen in the league. And the 49ers do a great job of setting him up and allowing him to kind of do what he does in the middle of the field. I think if I'm the Saints, man, the game plan has to start with being able to understand where 85 is and the things that we need to do to minimize his effectiveness as a run blocker and pass catcher.
Yeah, no question on offense. I mean, we've seen that. Just you go back and look at the highlights from Raheem Mostert's day, and a lot of those runs came courtesy of George Kittle creating some space. And then how do the Saints offensively go after and try to attack what's been one of the best, if not the best, defense with the 49ers?
I think, look, this is a game where if we had to call it a show, it would be Dancing with Stars.
Yes.
They got to dance with their best players. So it has to be Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara having big games with Drew Brees kind of being the facilitator. Michael Thomas has been a guy who hasn't been able to be – like no one has stopped him. No one has kind of cracked the code to slow him down. I think Sean Payton will do a great job of putting him inside in the slot. He'll be the number 3 receiver and some of their 3-by-1 sets, and he'll get a chance to work on maybe some of those linebackers and utilize his quickness against those guys, but also his physicality and toughness against the nickels and dime players that he may face in the slot. And then Alvin Kamara, I think what you want to do with Alvin Kamara is if they're going 3-by-1, you want to put him on the backside and let him run those option routes on that linebacker, because the thing that the Saints have that others don't is their 2 players on the inside, they are nearly impossible to double when Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas are on the field at the same time.
Right.
So you got to pick your poison. And I think what you have to do if you're the 49ers, you got to make Drew Brees constantly have to figure out where the double team is coming from and hope that he is slightly off his mark on that day.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one to watch. Saints and 49ers down to the Superdome. Top of the NFC could shake up quite a bit after this week, especially when you consider you got the Seahawks, who are right up there as well, getting set to take on the Rams right here in LA on Sunday as well. And if you remember, the Rams just fell short against the Seahawks back in Week 5 in Seattle. Seattle had a 6-minute 51-second drive that they had to close out the game and take the lead. What was the final margin after Chris Carson had a 5-yard touchdown pass from Russell Wilson there? They won that game 30-29. Russell Wilson had 268 yards and 4 touchdowns. Carson went for over 100. Jared Goff threw for nearly 400. So he's coming off a 400-yard game a week ago. What do the Rams have to do offensively? Like we've seen in the last couple of weeks, Bucky, they've kind of gone back and forth. They went to a heavy Todd Gurley run team a couple of weeks ago against the Bears. And then last week, Goff goes for over 400 against the Cardinals. So what kind of Rams offense do you expect to see against Seattle?
I think no matter which way they go, whether they're running or passing, I think Todd Gurley has to be the centerpiece. Sean McVay this week talked about how he's probably been an idiot. Like he probably should have used him more. And that's the one thing that I couldn't understand when I heard the load management stuff or the things that they were trying to do. It just didn't make sense to me to take your best offensive player off the field, because make no mistake about it, when you ask defensive coordinators who is the guy that you fear the most on the Rams, it always is number 30. Mm-hmm. His ability to run the ball on the edges. When he was at his best a year or so ago, catching the ball out the backfield, being a dynamic dual threat from his halfback position, he is the one that makes it go. When they put the ball in the hands of Jared Goff, as a defensive coordinator, you actually prefer that, because Jared Goff has not been a guy that has been able to be consistently effective on traditional dropbacks. His game is at best when he's able to throw off play action, stick the ball into the belly of Todd Gurley, bring those linebackers up, then drop it over their heads in those soft voids. They have to run the ball well enough to be able to do that. And then when it comes down to dealing with that man coverage, it is all about the pick and rub game. Watch for the condensed splits, the tight alignments, where they can kind of create some natural rubs on the releases so they can get the Seattle Seahawks defenders' hands off of their wide receivers. It is important for their guys to win on the outside, but Sean McVay is going to have to scheme it up to give them opportunities.
And the Seahawks offensively, I feel like, have the potential to be one of the most balanced teams that we see offensively, with the way they can run now with not just Chris Carson, but Rashad Penny, who's really come on in the last couple of weeks. And then clearly, if you're getting DK Metcalf in a situation where he's one-on-one, no high safety, running the deep over route, you're going to be in trouble, because that is as good a combination as we've seen when Russell Wilson can hit that ball. He does that as well as any quarterback in football right now. So for the Rams defense, who definitely found some success after a rough outing against the Ravens, they found some success against Arizona, a team that's still kind of trying to find their way in their first year with Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. What's the biggest challenge for the Rams defense this week?
The Rams defense, it has to start with stopping the run game.
Yeah.
The Seattle Seahawks, despite having a franchise quarterback in Russell Wilson, it is all about their run game. And of late, Rashad Penny and Chris Carson have done a great job of kind of sharing the load. Both guys alternating who gets the 100-yard game. Combined, the Seattle Seahawks have a punishing running attack that really kind of takes your soul on defense. And so for the Rams, they have to kind of be a little unconventional and get after that. I think you'll see Wade Phillips kind of blitz the run game, and he'll put the onus on his corners to hold up in coverage with and without help. So we will see how good they are in the back end. This defense has drastically improved with Jalen Ramsey, but how are they able to kind of match up and deal with the Seahawks while also slowing down their run game?
Yeah, no question. All right, so looking forward to those two matchups, Niners and Saints, Seahawks and Rams. And for a closer look at some other of the pressing topics that require the clicker, the tape, and a little hashtag Baldy's breakdown, let's get to an interview that you and DJ did with our very own Brian Baldinger.
All right, Buck, well, here he is, our good buddy Brian Baldinger joining the show. And Baldy, first of all, man, we talk all the time, but I'm just curious about this, because every Monday when you start your work on Baldy's Breakdowns, which everybody loves on social media, hashtag Baldy's Breakdowns, I'm just curious if there's one team or one scheme or one player that you are most look forward to every week that's going to be part of your Monday routine. I've got to see what they're doing. Who is it?
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a couple right now, DJ, that I really look forward to. I love watching the Saints defensive front play, and what they've done, especially when Drew Brees was out and they were kind of just controlling all those games up in Seattle and Dallas and some of the big games they won along that stretch. They were really fun to watch. It's always fun to watch, the 49ers run game, especially when George Kittle was playing, because he's just the best blocking tight end in football. It was fun watching Seattle get busy last night against the Vikings, DJ, just the way that they just pounded the Vikings. And, the play right now of, DJ Fluker and Apati, I mean, just massive human beings just rolling people out of there, and really two good backs. I mean, I kind of like the old school. I love watching everything that Greg Roman and Lamar is doing right now in all phases of the game. I mean, whether it's the playbook, whether it's, the option game or the power game or, unbalanced formations, all the stuff that Greg Roman's doing there, man, it's fun to watch right now.
Baldy, it's funny that you brought up the Baltimore Ravens run game, because I know you spent a lot of time calling college games and digging deep into your repertoire and your history of the game. Man, the stuff that they're doing, Baldy, like that stuff is 70s and 80s football. It's just kind of sped up with Lamar Jackson at quarterback.
It is. I mean, just, the power, the unbalance, the tight ends. It's been around a long time. I mean, I've known Greg Roman since he was a high school coach here in New Jersey over in Ocean City, and he used to run the same stuff at, Holy Spirit High School, 10 years ago, before he got on board with Harbaugh in San Francisco. And so it's nothing new. It's nothing new, but, I think that, the fact that they can play three tight ends in any phase of the game, because of the versatility right now of Mark Andrews and what he could do out of the slot, just like he did at Oklahoma, Buck, right? I mean, they just are a difficult team to match up with. And then the unknown is just what Lamar's going to do, because you can do what the Patriots did, or you could do what the 49ers did last Sunday, and you could have everything assignment perfect. And then there's the Lamar factor, where you could be in perfect position, he's going to make you miss, or he's going to just do something that's unconventional, and his eyes are going to take him someplace else, and you may have it defended, but you're going to give up a big gain. And so they have been pretty busy demoralizing teams this year.
It's fun to watch, though, Baldy. When I was at App State, we ran quarterback follow. It looked a little different when I ran it there against Furman than when I saw Lamar running against the 49ers.
Well, it's funny because Eric Armstead is right in the hole to make that play, and I'm thinking,
I know. He was frozen. Paralyzed.
Frozen. And so, the play you're talking about is where, at the academies, whether it's West Point or the United States Naval Academy right now, that quarterback fakes the dive, and then he comes right behind him, and the dive becomes the lead blocker, like Ingram was. And I'm thinking, well, maybe Lamar's just watching the Naval Academy. Maybe he's going over there on Saturday afternoons and watching what they've been doing all year to every team in the country. And because that's all it became. And it's I'm sure at App State, DJ, I'm sure that you had your positive gains, but probably not as
Baldy,
as
16
as
for 100,
did.
baby. 16 for 100 in one game against Furman, and then I couldn't walk for 3 weeks, so then I was like, screw that, I'm not doing
You're
that
in an
anymore.
ice bath for the next week, huh? But it is fun to watch, and everybody keeps asking, right? Because that's what you're going to be writing about, Bucky, and you see who can stop it. Well, I don't know that anybody can really stop it. The Patriots had a great game plan. The 49ers have all the talent in the world to stop it, and they limited to the passing game. But he runs, they run for another 200 yards. They're going to set an NFL record for rushing yards in a season. And but I think that's the good teams in this league right now can flat out run it. And the teams that are getting away from it, like the Eagles, have gotten away from it. When you get away from it, your chances of winning and all the bad things that happen just creep in, and so you better figure out a way.
Baldy, let me ask you this though. I want to jump in on this. I know Buck, you're up next, but Baldy, because I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when you say that, I would love to get your take on this because all the analytic people, right? This is what's confusing to me because there's that crowd and you know who they are.
Yeah.
Throw. And then but I'm trying to figure this out because the Baltimore Ravens, and I know everybody there, you know everybody there, they're one of the more analytically driven teams in the entire league, and they're running the living crud out of the football. So explain that to me.
Well, until last week, Lamar hadn't fumbled the ball away at all. I mean, they'd taken care of the football really, really well. So they've limited the number of turnovers, sacks, negative type plays. They run they go for it on fourth down as much as any team in this league. So they're always within striking distance of moving the chains. So that's a good thing. They're not getting into those real negative situations right now. If you look at them just from a standpoint of third downs, I mean, they're 49%. They're right at the top of the league. And so I think all those things just play into it, just ball possession. And, and people, I know those analytic people will tell you, look, ball possession doesn't make any difference either. As long as you're, having the big chunk plays and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at the chunk plays, their chunk plays come out of the running game. Teams get tired of tackling those guys. Gus Edwards, Mark Ingram, what Justice Hill did the other day in his explosive run. The explosive plays can come out of the running game. They're proving that right now. And that's the counter to the analytics. And what they're saying is you need explosive plays in order to win, which is true. But if your explosive plays are coming out of the run game, what's the difference?
Baldy, when you look around the rest of the league right now, to me, I thought this was fascinating, the game between Pittsburgh and Cleveland. Because you look at the skill position players, there's not one skill position player for Pittsburgh in that football game that would have started for the Cleveland Browns. Not one.
Right.
Quarterback, receivers, running backs, none of them. But to me, it goes back to a little bit of what we're talking about here. Winning football, foundational football, still starts up front. Pittsburgh's better than them up front on both sides of the ball, and I thought that's just one microcosm of kind of how teams get lost when they're building their football team when they don't start right there.
Well, the odd thing is Nick Chubb leads the league in rushing, right? So, I mean, they've got the league's best runner, and what Kareem Hunt has added to that team, I mean, you just have to stay. I mean, that was a close ball game all game, and James Washington makes a big play for Pittsburgh, but I mean, that was a game where you could have just stayed with the run game a lot longer than they did. The one thing that Pittsburgh is doing is they're playing shutdown pass defense right now. I mean, for the first time in a long time, and Mink has been a big part of it, but I mean, between what Hilton is doing and Hayden and Edmonds and that secondary right now, I mean, they took every single deep shot away from the Cleveland Browns, and they kept trying it to Landry, to Odell, to Higgins. I mean, they tried their deep shots. They didn't get anything all day long. And so they're just long strikes right now. And so, and then they allowed the rush to get home, and they just pounded on Baker. And, they're just better up front. TJ and Dupree and the guys that they have right now, they didn't have to blitz to get pressure, but their coverage down the field was just airtight all game long.
Hey, Baldy, I want to kind of expand on that Pittsburgh point because you've done some nice videos on them, and you talked about their shutdown pass defense. When you think about the job that Mike Tomlin has done with this team, because they're without weapons, is this the best coaching job that you've seen him do since he's been in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think it is, Buck. And, I think we can lose track. I mean, he's been there, I think, 13 years. So it's a long time, and, you can probably go in and out. But, I mean, they certainly don't have anywhere near the offensive talent that they had for a long stretch there. I mean, that doesn't exist. You're pulling guys up from the practice squad to run the ball on Sundays and things like that. But, I saw him, Buck, in the third week of the season in San Francisco, and it was Mason Rudolph's, first start and all that kind of stuff. And the defense took the ball away 5 times that day, and they just about pulled off an upset in San Francisco. And, they lead the league in takeaways right now. They're at the very top of the list in sacks. Defensively, they've been outstanding. They've fueled them into this postseason group of teams right now that could certainly qualify. But I just think, making the decision to pull Mason Rudolph and put Devlin Hodges in there, I mean, there's a lot of moves that he has made that I think a lot of people would have probably questioned and say, how can you do this? You cut this guy, now you're bringing him back and you're starting him this late in the season, and it was the right move. It's clearly the right move. And, his joke is like, don't F it up. Like, we're going to be here. And he didn't. And so I just think that it's, overall, to keep that team believing, to make the trade where nobody thought it was a great trade, to trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick. I didn't hear anybody say, boy, that's a great deal by the Steelers. I didn't hear anybody saying that, especially when they were 0-3. But it was clearly the right trade, and it's the best defensive team that I've seen in a long time under Mike Tomlin right now. And he's been as big a reason why. Now, certainly the drafting of Devin Bush has been huge. But it's, they do things against the Rams. They played 7 defensive backs in their nickel, and they took the linebackers off the field, and they played coverage and speed and all that. And so they've been innovative at the same time, in addition to just the overall, just keeping your eye on the next week's opponent and, not listening to the noise and all that other kind of stuff that coaches will tell you to do.
Baldy, I'd love to get your thoughts real quick on the Eagles, a team that you're around all the time. When you look at this football team, I mean, a couple things stand out to me, none more so than the fact that, gosh, it just looks like a slow football team to me when I watch them. What are your takeaways on the disappointment so far in Philly?
Well, they are slow. They got old and they got slow. They're slow at receiver. I mean, they went, and I kind of understand what, Howie and Andy did. I mean, they brought a lot of older guys in because they thought they were real close. And they thought the quarterback was in, really good shape to really lead this team. And he clearly has not developed this year. His fundamentals are terrible, and he has not been good. But, you kept Jason Peters, and, you look at the safeties. Malcolm Jenkins led the team in tackles, didn't miss a snap last year. And, Rodney McLeod, I mean, they look slow at safety. You kind of went in that direction at the defense line, whether it was bringing, Vinny Curry back, and you just look at, what they are in the defensive line. They're not fast. And so I agree with you. They do look like that. Alshon Jeffrey has never been a speed guy, but, he certainly could win a share of jump balls and all that kind of stuff. But I agree. I mean, they don't look like they have a lot of speed. Jordan Howard has never been that guy. And so, but they tried to, I think, make one real good run at it here, and I thought a lot of teams thought that they looked like a Final Four team coming out of preseason, and it's gone backwards. The injuries and the lack of speed has certainly been part of it, but I don't see a lot of development with a lot of their younger players. I don't know why it took 13 weeks for J.C. Arcega-Whiteside to get in the end zone or even to get on the field for the most part. When I see rookie wide receivers around the league, I go 20 off the top of my head of guys that are either leading their team in receptions or making a major contribution right now around the league, and it wasn't the case in Philly.
I don't know if you had a chance to really look at Tennessee of late. This offense looks,
seen a lot of them.
Man, it looks so much different with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback as opposed to Marcus Mariota. Now, I know Derrick Henry has certainly made contributions in the run game, but What have you seen from Ryan Tannehill? What has been the difference with him at the helm compared to Marcus Mariota?
Well, DJ and myself, we were there the day that they turned the reins over to him in Tennessee when they played the Chargers. Yep. And, the first thing was he got the ball to the wide receivers. Now, if you look at whether it's A.J. Brown right now, he's getting the ball down the field. And so that's a big part of it. And I think that the way that he plays in relation to the offensive line, because they struggled there for a long time too. When Marcus was in there. But I just think the way that he plays with the offense, how he steps up, where he finds the opening, he doesn't panic. He keeps his eyes down the field. He also is an elite athlete with the ball in his hands. And that was always, the trait that we thought Marcus Mariota had. But he's not. He doesn't panic. He keeps his eyes down the field. He's getting the ball to the wide receivers. That's the biggest thing I see right now. And then you see a kid like Nate Davis, who was a real question mark for a long time at right guard, Buck. All of a sudden, he looks like a road grader in there, on a team that now has truly found their identity with Derrick Henry. They don't even put Deion Lewis in the game anymore. It's Derrick Henry's show. And it should be. And 3 weeks in a row now in this 3-game win streak, he's running it. And then I think that Tannehill has just played complimentary football, and he's not turned the ball over. He's not making bad mistakes or mistakes with the ball, especially under pressure right now. In a 17-17 game last week, he was cool, and I think they believe in him right now. That's the biggest thing. That whole organization really believes in him.
One thing that's interesting watching them, Baldy, is Derrick Henry's production when they're getting outside. And I never thought about this from a scouting standpoint until I watched this, but when you have somebody with his length, you can't. His stiff arm is just ridiculous because he's freaking sticking his arm out 6 feet. Malik Hooker's trying to just grab onto his arm because he can't get anywhere near his torso. But I've never really thought about length with a running back. We never would talk about that. And it's not going to be a factor when you're running between the tackles. But, man, when they get him out on the perimeter, that's a weapon with how dang long he is.
Well, but at the same time, he's a complete outlier. When I look at Derrick Henry, I look at him eye to eye. I know they list him at 6'3", but he looks taller than that. He looks like Brandon Jacobs out there. There's Eric Dickerson, there's Brandon Jacobs, there's Derrick Henry. There's just not that many guys that are built like that. And you're right. His length is unbelievable, and when he does get in, they're trying to get, you can see right now, even in the opening play of the game against the Colts, they're doing the fake pitches and the screens. They're just trying to get him on the perimeter right now, where he could just take advantage of exactly what you're talking about against, defensive backs. And I don't care who it is in this league right now. Nobody looks good against Derrick Henry out there in the alleys or out there in space right now. And when he gets there, it's, good luck trying to get him down. I saw Darius Leonard just bounce off him last week, and he only led the league in tackles with 190 a year ago, and he bounced right off him.
A lot of times they can't even get to him, though. They can't get to when he gets to the outside. They can't get to his torso. It's the darndest thing you've ever seen. But I saw him, Baldy, when he was at Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and it was like kind of the first time he got some reps. And I swear to you, I was up in the box, and I'm watching it, and I go, why are they putting the tight end at running back? And somebody's like, no, that's a young running back. I was like, that's a running back? And then he took off, and the rest is history.
Yeah, no, I hear a lot of those stories, though, even going back to high school now, DJ, and what he was like in high school and what he was like, because he was that size, he was almost that size in high school. So he was a grown man when he was 17 years old. Imagine, being a high school kid trying to tackle somebody that looked like that.
Ugh. It is unbelievable to see somebody at that size kind of running the way that he is running. It's just one of those things that you don't see. Hey, final question for me, Baldy. The New England Patriots and Tom Brady. Is this it? Is he going to be able to dust himself off and kind of find a way to be Captain America all over again and get them to the Super Bowl and really make plays?
Well, he's still throwing the ball fine to me. The bad communication between him and Philip Dorsett or N'Keal Harry on the interception last week. N'Keal Harry's he's got to fight for that ball. He can't let Bradley Roby just run right through him to get that ball. I'm not saying it's the greatest throw, but there's been a lot of receivers that played in New England that would go get that ball. Edelman will go get that ball. There's been a lot of guys who went and got it. The bad timing, I saw 3 shots to Dorsett where he stuttered in the end zone, and Brady's thinking that he's just going to run through the back of the letters, and it's an incompletion on 3rd down, the opening drive. I mean, that's got to get cleaned up, and if it does get cleaned up, and I don't know that it can, Bucky, but if it can get cleaned up, because we went through this last year with him. He was awful against Tennessee last year. I mean, there's games, you can see more of them now as he does get older. But I didn't think the offensive line was just god-awful last week. They weren't great, but, losing the center right now is really going to hurt them. They don't have a tight end that can block. I mean, that's a real noticeable factor. I think they do still have a chance to make a run because the chances are they're going to get a home playoff game, and maybe 2 playoff games. And we know what they're like in January up there. So I'm not ruling them out right now, but they certainly don't look like the Ravens. They certainly don't look like, even the Houston Texans right now. I mean, those 2 teams look far superior to them right now.
I want to take this thing full circle before we get out of here, Baldy, because I want to get your thoughts on this. Go back to the Baltimore Ravens with the way they're rolling. And when you watch that tape, you're referencing that play with Armstead where he gets upfield and it doesn't touch anybody, totally is frozen. But when you watch it, you'll see the unblocked man, and go back to kind of your option rules of who's got the quarterback, who's got the dive,
right.
Basically what you got to use here against this Ravens team. But I kind of looked at it as you had the unblocked end, or whoever they just choose not to block that they're going to read, and then you had the second-level defender who was unblocked. So it's still 2-on-2, but the second-level defender can't find the football, and so that's when Lamar's coming out the back door. All right, I keep waiting for this to happen, and it hasn't happened, where I call the first man to the party, the unblocked man, is just going to go hit Lamar Jackson and force the ball to be handed off, and then take your chances with Mark Ingram in the middle of the defense versus Lamar Jackson on the perimeter of the defense. But it hasn't happened, and I'm wondering if this is something that teams, if they see it a couple times, that they're going to make this adjustment. But, man, I'm kicking the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands every single time if I'm the unblocked defender, and they don't do it.
I agree with you, and I go back, DJ, to RG3's rookie season. I think it was his rookie season. And I remember he played the Cincinnati Bengals, and that's exactly what the Bengals did. I mean, they broke him in half. And, they took a couple of, penalties on shots, but they were not going to let him beat him. And he was, and then eventually Haloti Ngata just broke him, in a game against the Ravens late in the year that year. But I'm waiting for the same thing. I'm thinking, like, all right, Nick Bosa could go tackle Mark Ingram or Gus Edwards, but I think it'll have a bigger impact if he just goes and just takes the shot right at Lamar Jackson and living with the dive. And that's what's up. I mean, I'm kind of waiting. Maybe Buffalo will do that this week, with their ends right now, and we'll see if that kind of shakes them up. But that's usually the way to stop the read option if the quarterback's hurting you, is to go hit the quarterback and just treat him like a running back. And I think that's what I'm waiting to see, just like you.
That's what the last thought for me. That was what was funny, because people on social media are saying Nick Bosa only had 1 tackle. I said, no, he had 9 tackles, just 8 of the times the guy didn't have the football. Ridiculous. But, hey, Baldy, thank you so much, man. You're very generous with your time today. You are the absolute best. I encourage any of our listeners, if they haven't done it already, please follow Brian Baldinger on Twitter and on Instagram, all social media. He is the absolute best of breaking down football. Not only will you enjoy it, you'll learn something. You'll be smarter for it. So thanks so much for your time, Baldy.
I appreciate it, DJ. Buck, always a pleasure, man. Take care, guys, all right? Thanks for having me.
Well, Rhett, one thing that I love about Brian Baldinger is his ability to really take the complex on tape and make it really simple and easy to digest, not only for me, but for the listeners. And I think his breakdowns of offensive and defensive football are, man, as good as they come. And I'm excited that he's beginning to get some love, got his own little thing where everyone knows to tune in, has his hashtag. I thought he had like a little gift and a logo.
I'm seeing the logos coming. Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah, he's doing big things. And we've seen it was Baldy's Big Boy doing Path to the Draft.
That's right.
Now Baldy's breakdowns on Twitter, they kind of lighten it up.
Oh, man, he's doing a great job. And I certainly enjoyed when I got to work with him on the Aftermath and saw how passionate he is about watching the tape. And he locks himself in the vault and just grinds on the tape. And we love the product that he comes up with. So thanks to Baldy. Okay, so let's get into some of the conference championship games going on this weekend. Obviously, big weekend in college football. A lot of these championship games could have a major impact on the college football playoff scenarios, especially when we get into the Pac-12 championship, where Utah could certainly get in there as the fourth team, taking on Oregon. And Justin Herbert was obviously a big part of our quarterback draft process in the next few months. Obviously going to be a lot of eyes on him here, Bucky, and for talent evaluators and for GMs and executives here, they're going to make these decisions. What kind of statement can Justin Herbert make as he tries to lead his Ducks past Utah this weekend?
Hey, Brett, this is the biggest game that Justin Herbert will play in his career. It's the biggest game because everyone loves a lot of what Justin Herbert represents. Prototype size, great athlete, terrific arm talent. The biggest question in his resume is, what's the signature game? Has he performed at a level in a big game to lead to believe that he can be a dominant player in the National Football League? He hasn't done that. Utah has a number of NFL prospects on both sides of the ball. This is going to be a high-profile game. This will be a chance for Justin Herbert to change the narrative. Right now, everyone is kind of riding the wave on Joe Burrow because Joe Burrow has performed well in these big environments. We saw him play well against Alabama. We've seen him play well against other big-time teams. Can Justin Herbert change the conversation by having a big game against Utah? That is what everyone wants to see.
Yeah, no question. Not sure we ever really got that super signature game from Josh Allen last year, but he still ended up being the 7th overall pick in the draft and the third quarterback off the board. So, look, it's still possible that Herbert ends up in the top 10 despite what happens against Utah this weekend. But it's going to be a fun game to watch for sure as we get that one on Friday. Now let's move to Saturday, the Big 12 championship game, Baylor and Oklahoma. Obviously, we've talked about Jalen Hurts a lot. You and I did the last time we did this podcast together. It's kind of assessing where he might end up. Still, obviously, a lot of variables out there, a lot of unknowns on that. We'll know more about it as we get into the run-up to the draft. But I want to look at a couple of the receivers in this one, Bucky. Obviously, for Baylor, it's Denzel Mims, and then for Oklahoma, it's CeeDee Lamb. And do you have a comp yet on CeeDee Lamb? I mean, obviously, just going back, to last year with Hollywood Brown ending up in the first round as an Oklahoma wide receiver. What are you thinking for Lamb, and then again for Mims out of Baylor?
So I think the thing with CeeDee Lamb, the guy he reminds me of in a way is DeAndre Hopkins. And the reason I'm going to say the DeAndre Hopkins conversation is because I don't think CeeDee Lamb is going to be as fast as people anticipate, but I think he's going to be very, very effective in the pros because of his size, his ability to win these 50-50 balls down the field, and he's a playmaker. DeAndre Hopkins is very similar in that vein. He's not the fastest, but he consistently makes these contested catches that produce these long games. That's how he's going to impact the game. I think Denzel Mims, what's interesting to me about him is I don't think he's a fast guy either, but he's a chain mover. And when Baylor needs big plays in the passing game, when they need a first down, he is the guy that the ball goes to. And so when I'm evaluating, I'm looking at him and I'm looking for those critical situations in games, third down, red zone, 2 minutes, who can I rely on? I think Denzel Mims is that. And so in another big game, big profile, let's see how these two guys go back and forth when they're watching each other compete when they're on the sideline.
Yeah, that's going to be fun for sure. And look, for Mims, I mean, he's a guy that knows how to get it into the paint, Buck. I mean, you're talking about 3 straight seasons where he's had at least 8 receiving touchdowns. Got 11 this year in the regular season, so can only add to that potentially here in the postseason. Okay, so that'll be a fun one to watch for the Big 12 championship game on Saturday. Also on Saturday, usually one of the main events on championship weekend is the SEC championship game, and we've got Georgia and LSU meeting up here in East versus West. And look, LSU, they're in the playoff no matter what. Certainly feels like here. Joe Burrow has established himself as maybe the top quarterback going into the draft here with the season that he's put up. And then, going up against a guy in DeAndre Swift in Georgia, maybe the top running back off the board. There'll be a ton of prospects to look at in this one, Buck.
A ton of prospects. Look, man, Rhett, when you look at this game, what do you think about when you see these two teams square off? What's the first thing that comes to mind when you see these two teams?
I'd have to say just elite talent. That's one of the first things.
Yeah, I mean, it is a terrific game and a terrific matchup. Like, obviously, you tune in and you want to look at the quarterback.
The quarterbacks for sure, yep.
Yeah, everybody is excited about Joe Burrow, how much progress he has made this year to go and jump in Joe Brady's offense, to master it the way that he's mastered it, to not only show what he's shown as a player, I think it's the leadership ability. In 2 years, he has kind of flipped that locker room where those guys really, really admire and respect the way that he plays. And I think after watching Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have their success, I think that might need to be a bigger part of the quarterback evaluation than anything. How do your guys respond to the way that you perform? What kind of leader are you? How do you handle the adversity? And can you earn the respect of your teammates by the way that you handle those moments? I think that's the best thing that Joe Burrow offers. Look, All-State basketball player, Mr. Ohio, he's talented for days. Let's just see how he does it against a Georgia team that is loaded. And then when I look on the other side with Georgia, DeAndre Swift to me is a guy that doesn't get enough conversation and attention. Look, I think everyone understands in most minds that he's the number one running back on the board. I think when you look at him, though, I just come up with he's the natural. I don't know if I've seen a running back as natural as he is with the ball in his hands. He's smooth. He's fluid. He has the electric ability when he bursts and changes direction and gets in the open field. He also can catch the ball out of the backfield. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb. I mean, look, I know Todd Gurley was great, but DeAndre Swift, in terms of what he brings, potentially he could be the best running back to come out of it in the last 10 years.
Man, that's going to be fun to watch and evaluate as we go forward here in the next couple of months. Look, I'm going to use a couple of cornerbacks to link the SEC championship game and the Big Ten championship game. And by doing that, I'm going to talk about LSU's cornerback Christian Fulton. And then as we get into the Big Ten championship game, you're going to see Ohio State among the high-level elite prospects that the Buckeyes will trot out there. Cornerback Jeff Okudah is one of them for the Buckeyes. So let's talk about those two corners here for a second, because, I mean, I guess depending on who you ask, a 1 and 2, it certainly seems in terms of corners we could see in the draft with Fulton of LSU and then Okudah of Ohio State. Bucky, how do you see that?
Hey, look, man, when I'm looking at corners, the first place I always go to is I got to keep the ties around LSU because they have been known to produce corners. And you can say the same about Ohio State. But let's talk about Christian Fulton first. 6 foot, 200 pounds, long arms, ball hawk, great eyes, great instincts, even better hands. What you get when you get an LSU cornerback is you're the guy who has a ton of experience playing press man coverage, meaning he is very comfortable nose to nose, in your face, being able to put his hands on, jam and disrupt, and carry it. I love his competitive spirit. I love the way that he battles and competes. He is a guy that can kind of lock people down on the island. And Okudah, I think you can say the same thing. Ohio State just has a knack for producing high-level cornerbacks. They do a great job of having a variety of tools in the toolbox. They find a way to consistently get it done. And it's one of those things that you're always looking for at the position, meaning tough, fast, physical, great instincts, great ball skills. I think this ultimately, when we make this debate and to make the decision about both of these corners, it kind of comes down to style. Which style corner do you want to be your CB1?
No question.
Both of these guys, to me, are terrific players. They're going to be terrific prospects as we continue to look at them on path to the draft.
That's going to be fun. All right, so as we take that link and then dig a little bit deeper on the Big Ten championship game, I mean, look, clearly Chase Young, has got an opportunity to make yet another statement here. I mean, it's going to be, it's going to be fun to watch Wisconsin try to deal with him once again. And then the other thing that I think is kind of interesting in this one are the running backs on either side. Jonathan Taylor has more production than any running back in college football over his career. And then you got a guy like J.K. Dobbins, who's probably going to end up being a better prospect. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a game that is loaded. Briefly, we'll touch on Chase Young.
Yeah.
Chase Young is the best football player in college football. He will be the best prospect in the draft if he comes out.
No doubt.
He's a premier pass rusher, long, rangy, athletic, great hands, technically sound. And what I love about him is he has a terrific motor. So there are not many questions about him. With the two running backs, J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins to me is your prototypical running back. Yeah. He's kind of rugged, runs hard, and of late what we've seen,
down the stretch, Ohio State has leaned on him a little more, and he's responded in outstanding fashion. Yeah. We've seen him have a heavy workload, produce big numbers, physical, finishes runs, kind of plays it the right way. Jonathan Taylor, the production is through the roof. It's off the charts.
Yeah.
You just don't see a guy have, I think he has, 11 or 12 200-yard games in his career. And the thing that you have to balance when you evaluate Wisconsin running backs, how much of it is him, how much of it is the offensive line and the scheme. I think he's talented, but his talent is a little different because it's a little muted. He's not explosive. He doesn't have the kind of pop that you see at the running back position. But when you look at the end of the game, the numbers are there. And so it's going to be critical for evaluators to kind of understand fit and scheme. What is the best fit for him to play in? Because I think he has to play in the right scheme for him to pop as a pro.
Yeah, and for Taylor, I mean, look, you're looking at a guy who has an opportunity to go for over 1,900 yards if we're counting the Big Ten championship game and then their bowl game for the third consecutive year. 49 total rushing touchdowns for his career as it stands now. The one thing that I thought was interesting this year, especially earlier in the season, we saw them use him more as a receiver. 22 receptions this year, ended up with 5 receiving touchdowns. So he's got 25 total touchdowns this year. And here's just one note that our producer Nabil obviously is very in tune with here as a avid Wisconsin Badger fan. If Wisconsin wins the Big Ten championship game, which is a huge if, they will have 2 losses and then 4 top 20 wins to their record, whereas Clemson, with a loss in the ACC championship game, which, again, is a huge if, going up against Virginia, which we'll get into here in just a second, they'd have 1 loss on the season but 0 top 25 wins. Okay, that, again, brought to you by our producer, Nabil, who is obviously very interested in making the Wisconsin Badgers record stand up very tall this year. All right, so that's the Big Ten title game. Let's get back to the ACC championship game, Virginia and Clemson. And if we're talking about elite receivers in college football, I think, you sit there and you talk about the Alabama quartet, right? You talk about Ruggs and you talk about, obviously Jerry Jeudy and Smith and Waddle and those guys. And then, CeeDee Lamb, we've already talked about, Denzel Mims. One receiver that's certainly an elite player in college football that we don't talk about a ton is Clemson's wideout T. Higgins. Where does he fit in this whole thing as Clemson gets set to battle Virginia on Saturday for the ACC title game?
Hey, T. Higgins is a dominant player. T. Higgins has a lot of qualities that you really like at the position. He's tall. You're talking about 6'3", 6'4", 210, 215 pounds, can run like the wind, consistently get separation on vertical routes, and makes a ton of plays. He puts the ball in the paint, which is what you absolutely want to see. Now, I don't believe he's a classic number 1 receiver. What I think he is a complimentary playmaker on the outside. That said, still doesn't mean that he can't be a first-round pick if he comes out because he has traits that you look for. This will be, Rhett, and I'm excited as we kind of flip the calendar and we get into the path to the draft and we talk about these things. This will be the year of the playmaker. Yeah. There's so many playmakers available at the skill positions. People are getting excited about the quarterbacks, but this year we have a ton of pass catchers to talk about. And so T. Higgins is one of many guys that can impact the game, impact the pass game on the outside.
All right, so look, I mean, are you giving Virginia a shot in that game?
No, I think Clemson will blow them out the water. I think Clemson.
Yeah.
I think they're going to blow them out the water. Dabo has all of their attention. He has the antenna up. They're ready to go. They feel like they've been disrespected in the process. I don't really know what he wants because they don't have a signature win, but I get it. You're defending national champions. You're sitting there at 3. You would like to think that, look, based on our resumes in previous years, we would come in kind of viewed as the number 1, but they haven't. We'll see. They get a chance to show everybody this weekend with a big win over Virginia and set it up for the playoff.
And I guess because DJ's name is on the marquee, we have to talk about the Sun Belt Championship game with his App State Mountaineers. Yeah, they actually, it sure is. They're going to play the guys down from my home state in Louisiana. But yeah, look, DJ, I'm sure wants to talk about Darrington Evans and Akeem Davis-Gaither and that whole crew. I mean, look, App State, and we can make all the jokes we want to make, but they have been a really good football team in Eli Drinkwitz's first year here, and Zach Thomas, a good quarterback. So I mean, they've got a lot to look forward to for sure.
They do have a lot to look forward to. They're ranked 21. They're 11-1, 7-1 in the conference. Only lost to Georgia Southern, which was a surprise. I actually watched that game. I think it was a Thursday night game.
Yeah.
Drinkowitz, this is interesting because he's beginning to get a lot of love on the coaching trail.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that are kind of poking around and throwing his name out for Ole Miss and Arkansas and some of those jobs. Like, I would hate for him to be a one-and-done guy for the App State Mountaineers. But, look, that's what happens when you have success. 11-1, this is one of the best teams that we've seen from App State. They beat my Tar Heels. They won on the road. They beat South Carolina. They're set up now to win a title game, and we're looking at an App State team that could win 12 games. Man, that's kind of remarkable.
Yeah, no question. And look, App State has become a really good job. I mean, Scott Satterfield did a really good job, and now he just wins Coach of the Year in the conference in his first season at Louisville, taking over the mess left by Bobby Petrino. So, look, there's been put some good coaches through App State, no question about it. I'm definitely going with them in the Sun Belt Championship. I'll give you a quick bonus in the Conference USA Championship game because we saw a lot of Conference USA here on NFL Network this season with the 10 regular season games that we had, and we saw the eventual East Division champion Florida Atlantic led by Lane Kiffin, but for how much longer, Bucky? Certainly his name has been a popular one as the coaching circuit has started following the regular season's conclusion in college football. But we're going to see FAU take on UAB from Boca Raton for the Conference USA Championship game. Look, I think one of the prospects that we're going to see again on NFL Network is Harrison Bryant, the tight end from FAU. Has been one of the best tight ends in college football this year. He's a Mackey Award finalist. Going to be fun to watch him, Bucky. I know you did a little. You kind of gave us a little scout's eye on him.
Yeah, a little breakdown. Like, Lane Kiffin has done a really good job down at FAU. He has kind of brought that program to prominence. Last couple of years, we saw Singletary go to the Buffalo Bills from that program, and now we have the opportunity to see their tight end. Look, I think the interesting thing with Lane Kiffin is where does he fit in this coaching carousel? Will teams be willing to kind of take on everything that comes along with Lane Kiffin? Not only the offensive acumen, but the shenanigans off the field, the social media posts, and all that other stuff. There's no denying, though, he's a good coach. He's a great offensive mind. At some point, he's going to get an opportunity to have a bigger job. Doesn't necessarily mean it'd be a better job, but he's definitely going to have an opportunity to have a bigger job.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Okay, and then on the other side, UAB, they've got a talented trio of wide receivers with Kendall Parham, Austin Watkins. They've also got a defensive lineman, one of the best defenses in college football, by the way, the UAB Blazers. Garrett Marino is the name to watch for UAB. He is an interior disruptor. He's a guy that in the mold of those kind of like Geno Atkins, Aaron Donald types in the NFL. I'm not saying he's on that level. I'm just saying he's a guy that can get after the passer from the interior and has done that for UAB this year. He's a fun one to watch as well.
Yeah, like, look, UAB, tremendous amount of respect for them and what they've been able to do. I mean, you talk about coming from the abyss to bouncing back and being one of the top teams in college football, playing for a championship. They've done a terrific job, and kind of like their rebirth, reemergence as a college football power. So, no, this will be a great game to watch.
Yeah.
All eyes will be on Lane Kiffin, but you're right. UAB and their defense has been lights out.
UAB has not lost a home game since they brought football back in 2017. It's crazy. It's crazy the job that Bill Clark has done for UAB. Terrific. So that'll be fun to watch. That one in Boca, though, as UAB takes on Florida Atlantic. All right. So obviously we'll dissect those games next week once we get back here with you. But also want to get into some fan questions here. As we ask you to leave a comment and leave a question in the comments, and we answer some of them. So Nabil, what do we got? What are some of the questions that we found this week?
All right. First one. Who do you think the best GM in the league is?
Ooh, good question, Bucky. What do you got?
I mean, man, that's tough. Like, best GM in the league. I think there are a lot of people that have done terrific jobs. Obviously, the job that John Snyder has done up in Seattle.
Great,
has been terrific. I think you can begin to throw Chris Ballard. I think you can throw John Lynch's name in that in terms of how they come up. But how about a name that doesn't get enough attention for what he's done since he's been elevated to the GM post? Jeff Ireland down in New Orleans.
Great one.
Had an opportunity in Miami. I think he learned from that experience. But what he has done of late in terms of rebuilding and building that New Orleans Saints teams, they're not glaring weaknesses on their roster. And so you have a great football evaluator with a great mind in Sean Payton. It's not a surprise that New Orleans is right on top. They've already clinched their division.
I don't know if he's eligible for the Executive of the Year award, but low-key candidate, dark horse candidate, Bill O'Brien, with what he's done, assuming the GM role or at least a share of the GM role in Houston, I think deserves a little love as well.
He does deserve some love, and you're right, man.
Yeah.
He has. He's kind of picked it up. Like, there are a lot of people that was questioning his decision to kind of take over, me included, but he made some moves that have kind of turned out. Like, it's funny, maybe the Jadeveon Clowney trade has been a win-win for both teams because they have gotten some production out of those guys that came over.
Jacob Martin.
And then the move, Jacob Martin, we saw him have a big sack against the Patriots. And then Larry Tunsil coming over. He kind of shored up some stuff that they were having, and he's been injured a little bit, but he certainly helped them. He's helped Deshaun Watson play better. So, you can't knock Bill O'Brien. And you notice they're not looking for a general manager anymore.
That's right. That's right. It's an important distinction to make there. They have a combination they feel like works and has worked well, and I think we're seeing that as they lead the AFC South and the number 3 spot in the AFC as it stands at this point. All right, one more question. What do you got, Nabil?
The first quarterback drafted isn't always the best. Why do you think that is? Is it scouting or fit or too much pressure from being drafted high?
Well, I mean, Red, the easiest answer is you go to the worst team.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you draft the number 1, you go to the team that was viewed as the worst team in most instances. And so you don't have a lot of weapons around you. Sometimes you may be playing with a new coaching staff that's also trying to fix and rebuild and repair their culture. So you have a lot of things working against them. I think the guys that we saw have success, Lamar Jackson, we'll bring him up because he went lower, but the Baltimore Ravens were an established team. They were a playoff team, a team that was always on the cusp. So it wasn't like they had to orchestrate this radical overhaul to get it ready for him. And I think that is why. I think Buffalo, even though they had a down year before they got Josh Allen, they had playoff success 2 years prior. So the infrastructure was in place. So a lot of it is, we talked about it earlier, fit in scheme and fit in locker room and understanding the character. Your quarterbacks that typically have tremendous success early in their career are guys that go to better teams, better coaching staffs.
I'm with you. I think that's why we saw, Dak Prescott have some success with the Cowboys. Obviously, a reason why, like Russell Wilson, we saw have some success with the Seahawks. Those were some teams that had some talent around them. And look, clearly they have kind of gone out on their own and made their own name for themselves, despite what's around them. But that's certainly a big part of it as well. All right, had some fun here with Bucky, coast to coast, continent to continent, here on the Move the Sticks podcast presented by AARP. Glad to have you guys here with us. And DJ will be back next week, and we'll have the 10 Takeaway podcast for you on Monday. Bucky, anything else before we get out of here?
No, man, enjoy a great football weekend. There are matchups for days. Saturday and Sunday should be a lot of fun.
No question about it. Looking forward to it here. Again, you can download the Move the Sticks podcast at Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Leave us a rating, a comment, and again, we'll answer some of those questions that you leave in the comments next week. You can also check out all of our videos at NFL.com/MTS video or at our new channel on YouTube, youtube.com/NFL podcast. And another reminder for you that the 10 Takeaway podcast is now available as a video show for you as well to enjoy. So I look forward to being back here with you on Monday. Thanks for listening to Move the Sticks, presented by AARP.